can't find nothing on the radio.
You ready, Steve?
Welcome to Songology. He's Bruce,
He's Richard.
and this is another episode from our Song of the Day archives.
Enjoy.
Welcome back, Bruce. It's a short week, and we're going to wrap it up. What's the last thing you have on the Mellotron?
Our last Mellotron song, it wouldn't be complete to look at the Mellotron without having something from King Crimson. And so what better to show off the Mellotron than their sort of eponymous song, The Court of the Crimson King, which comes from the album of the same name, which was their first album. King Crimson formed back in 1969. The band has existed in various forms on and off since then, but it's another one of those revolving door sort of groups.
Oh, okay.
The one constant is Robert Fripp, who is the guitarist and who also was one of the guys who was fiddling around with the Mellotron. But I did a quick head count. King Crimson has had over the years 16 different members, including for people like Greg Lake, who went on to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Bill Bruford, who is sometimes a member of Yes and sometimes not, John Wetton, who went on to form Asia, and Ian MacDonald, who went on to be a part of Foreigner. So lots of very talented people passed through King Crimson. A couple of guys who nearly passed through King Crimson. After the first album, Greg Lake left, and they auditioned a young fellow who up until that point had been known as Reg Dwight, but had recently changed his name to Elton John.
Oh.
But no, he didn't get the gig.
Didn't get the gig.
And they also auditioned and turned down a guy by the name of Brian Ferry, who went on to lead the band Roxy Music, who we'll hear from in the not-too-distant future. So Greg Lake, though, going back to him for a minute, in an interview, he said that King Crimson was a very strange band. He said part of the reason why it was so unusual is because he and Fripp were really, really close because they had known each other since they were kids, and they'd had the same guitar teacher, the same guy, got them going in music. He says that Ian MacDonald, who was the original keyboard specialist, had never been in a rock band before. He actually came from a military brass band. And though Lake says that in a way, though it was odd, it was a bit of a plus because MacDonald came at it without any preconceived ideas of what a rock band should be or should sound like. But the original drummer was the one that gave Lake the most difficulty. The original drummer was a guy by the name of Michael Giles. And Lake says that Giles had absolute independent movement between his left hand and his right hand, and his left foot and his right foot, that he could play 4 different time signatures simultaneously.
Wow.
And this was a problem. Why is this a problem? It's a problem because your bass player and your drummer have to really be the foundation for everything that everybody's doing, right?
Yeah.
And Giles used to delight in messing with Lake. By changing part of a time signature. He would be playing all sorts of drum fills and riffs and changing the time, and Lake couldn't adjust fast enough. It was a very difficult thing to do.
Uh-huh.
So the song itself, Court of the Crimson King, is, as I said, it's a title track from their debut album, the song that they took their name from. The original, which I am not going to play, is over 9 minutes long. But despite that, it actually got onto U.S. charts and made it as high as number 80, which was really kind of odd in 1969 for a song that long. But it was one of those things like Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven that was never released as a single, but DJs heard the record on the album and they played it anyway. So perhaps because they could go for lunch, I don't know.
They heard the song on the album?
Yeah, they heard they heard the Court of the Crimson King from playing the LP, right? And said, "Oh, I'm gonna play this on the radio."
No, I'm just catching you up there because you said they heard the record on the album. I was like,
Sorry, the song on the album.
Just trying to keep up.
You knew what I meant.
Sometimes.
Not what I said. Not what I meant. Yeah. So what I've got for you is actually from a later live performance. I think it actually, I haven't been able to track this down. I think it actually might be from an appearance of King Crimson on the British TV show Top Gear, which was primarily a car show, but strangely enough. So it's just over 5 minutes long. It's much more economical. Prominently features the mellotron. Everything that you hear that sounds kind of like an orchestra is the mellotron. Particularly, they really punch it in after the line "In the Court of the Crimson King." Now, Robert Fripp kept the mellotron even after Ian MacDonald left. Fripp kept working with the mellotron, trying to make it work. Eventually, he got so frustrated with it that he either sold it or possibly gave it away. But the recipient of King Crimson's mellotron was Tony Banks from Genesis. And Tony was a little more successful than Robert in getting the thing to work. So he had a little bit more fun with it than King Crimson ever had. At the time this record was released, Atlantic Records advertised it, claiming that it featured the heaviest riffs on record since Mahler's Eighth Symphony. But Pete Townsend of The Who, was quoted at the time as saying, "I know it had to cost £10,000 to make. I can't tell if it's worth it." So on that note, to finish off the odd and amazing precursor to the synthesizer, the mellotron, here's In the Court of the Crimson King.
The earth is captive to the moon, some seek the rising sun. I walk the road on wings of change, the game has just begun.
And as usual, I have to stop it right there due to the wonderful world of fair use rules. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. You can visit us on Facebook or head over to our website, songology.ca. Now, here's your chance to listen to the music or go on to the next episode.